I know this is kind of an asshole question because you're running on the independent ticket right now, but it's something I've been so curious about, which is if you look on paper, I think, and I could be wrong on this, and please correct me if I am, if you look on paper for what Democrats, the party, claim to stand for the most part, it seems like it's pretty much a progressive agenda. Now, that's not what they're doing with it, but it is kind of, in theory, it should be, universal health care like they did with Social Security. It should, all these issues. Do you think that it's important? Do you think it's more important for us to be almost infiltrating, kind of like Ron Paul did with the Republicans or like Dennis Kucinich did, infiltrating the Democrats with more progressive candidates so that you do have that, I hate to say that name behind you, but I think more people would be willing to listen? Or do you think right now that there are so many Democrats that have been corrupted or that have moved to the center or that have just massive corporate interests that we need to start from scratch? Or do you think it's something worth trying to fix?
Well, obviously I've made the decision that I don't think that it can be done. I think the progressive wing of the party is quite ineffectual because the members, there isn't enough strength. Dennis Kucinich is not succeeding. But, maybe I'm wrong about that. That for those who think that they're going to convert the Democrats, fine. I understand what they're trying to do. I think that it's not going to be a successful strategy. I think that Pelosi's ascension to Speaker is really good evidence of that. And I think that these last 2 years, they've so mishandled their advantage in Congress. You take Harry Reid in the Senate. I don't know if you realize this, but he has said, he's admitted this, which is that in the last 2 years, there have been more Republican filibusters in the Senate than in the history of the United States. Wow. And I think the number, he said it was over 70, then he said it was 60-something. In any
I did not
event,
know that.
Harry Reid lets the Republicans phone in to say they're going to filibuster. In other words, he doesn't even require them to go to the floor of the Senate and physically have to filibuster. Now, you tell me, what is he thinking? How can these guys call themselves a political party and allow the party in the minority to run over them like this? It's pathetic. It's just there is not a kind way of saying, when I heard this, I could not believe it. I just could not believe that the leader of the Democrats in the Senate could be this ineffectual.
Man, and we didn't hear that, which is even, and I like to think, this is what we do all day, is just kind of read this, and we didn't even hear it, and that's, that's heartbreaking. Maybe you're right. Maybe we do just have to, kind of grassroots just start again. You made this really great point. It had to do with essentially leaving the party, just publicly being like,
I see.
And,
well, it would be amazing. If they all left the party at once en masse and formed a new party, you would see, God, hundreds of thousands of people flock to it, and it would, and for those that think, oh my God, I'm going to lose my seat, well, you know what? It's probably the most important thing they'll ever do in their careers anyway. And I don't think they would lose their seat. I think they could start to really separate them out. Imagine if they did that and voted against this bailout or started in mass voting against the war. It would just change the political landscape of this country.
We'll just run through basic issues, and you can talk about where you where you differ. You talked about the war. One, I had a question for you because I think a lot of our listeners don't really know. When people talk about the bloated military budget, I think that's really easily spun because, again, with the soundbite culture, they don't have time to go into detail. I think that's really easily spun into, oh, so you don't want our troops to have vests or like you don't want them to have guns. But in reality, when you say that, you're referring to kind of just bloated, wasted projects that aren't even really being used for the most part. Like, it's not like taking basic necessities away from our troops, right?
Well, yeah, I agree with that, but it's a couple of other issues as well. I mean, one is that, the United States is maintaining hundreds of military bases in it, and the estimates are somewhere between 40 and 70 different countries. So it's really unclear what we're doing with a military presence in all of these different places. There was also a recent study that was put out that I read just last week, that the military cost of protecting oil and natural gas in other parts of the country are astronomical. And so, if you're talking about, $100 billion going into something like this, the question comes up, well, wow, what would happen if you really, if you promoted alternative energies? What would happen if you didn't have a foreign policy that was based on solely your foreign policy and corporate interests, and started trying to deal in diplomacy and deal with the reality that there are other sovereign nations that shouldn't be controlled by the United States simply because we're more powerful than they are. And, you're talking about there's just no reason why this military budget can't be cut in half and still maintain far more presence around the world than we should have. And Ron Paul has talked about this. I mean, it's not just a progressive idea. I think it's very discouraging when Obama and McCain are both saying, hey, we need to increase the military. That's dangerous. I think it speaks to the fact that they're trying to signal to the establishment that that they want to keep things the way they are, that they're not going to be a threat to the military, and that's precisely the kind of stuff that people should not put out. I mean, if that isn't enough to lose your vote, let's do it.
Yeah, I think McCain's actual quote, and I forget if it's the first or second debate, that he wants to cut social spending on everything except the military. It was
nice.
Yeah.